Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020-25 edition of the meme. First of all, I would like to apologize for things being slightly more messy this year than they usually are. Unfortunately, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, but we're academics and we are used to things being hard, so we're still ready to show the meme to you. Let's start with the schedule for today. So, of course, our doors were going to open a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, one of our speakers is very sick today and won't be able to join. So we have decided to delay the beginning of the meme just to give everyone some time to get ready. So I'll start with a small introduction to talk to you a little bit about what we do in the meme, what the initiative is about, and what is going to happen throughout the event. Then we will move on to two of our talks. We'll start with Susan Blackmore, and then we'll have Julie Novakova presenting about memes, each from their own perspective, and I let themselves introduce each other in a bit of more detail. Since we have delayed everything, we have also decided to delay the time for closing the voting booths. So if you're currently online in the exhibition, feel free to use this time while I'm speaking to go around the memes, choose your favorite ones, and vote for them. Because the second that I am done and Susan starts, we will be closing the booth and doing the counting to select which one is the winner for this year. So here you have a small picture of the setup for this year. Once you enter, you have the Hall of Fame, which shows the memes that have won in the past few years. And as you go straight ahead, you will have the voting booths. That's where you can get close to them with your avatar, and then a Google Sheet will show up where you can fill in your favorite memes. They're all numbered, so just make sure you put the right number. You can submit it, and we take into account your vote. As you can see, we have organized the memes in different categories, following mostly scientific topics. So general science, microscopes and telescopes, student life. But this year, we also have a raccoon special. So we thank Cassandra from KU Leuven, who has prepared a lot of raccoon-related memes. And we very much recommend you check out that part of the exhibition. And also, we would like to give a special thanks to IANA. IANA is the European conference that happens once a year for astrobiology. And this year, they agreed to let us host a competition for the best meme during the conference. So everyone that attended the conference got to submit memes, and then a jury of senior and young researchers got to vote for their favorite memes. So thank you very much for allowing us to be part of the conference and for submitting all the memes. And we have included all the memes submitted to IANA to the exhibition. So just in case I haven't convinced you that the raccoon area is one that really deserves your day, here are my two personal favorites of the raccoon memes. And we hope that next year, maybe you can choose a different animal and we can have, instead of a raccoon special, whatever animal is special. So just keep that in mind. And just as a reminder, we do allow submissions the entire year. So starting today, you can start submitting your memes to our website, and they will be included on next year's exhibition, which will happen again at the end of January, so the meme 2026. And we close the submissions a week to 2 weeks before, so that we have time to go through all the memes, classify them into categories, and make sure that everything is appropriate. This was also to just show some of the special memes that we got in IANA. So IANA this year was hosted in the city of Graz, which is where a lot of us actually got our PhDs. And we wanted to give a special shout out to Ali, who instead of using a template that was already available for the memes, decided to draw her own meme, which is also something that you can do. We still think this counts as a meme. So if you're very artistic and very creative and have your own ideas of what a meme should be like, please make sure that you do so. And also you just send it to us and we'll add it to the exhibition. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I hope that you're not just looking at my slides and watching me talk, but also going through the exhibit, checking out all the memes, because you still have more or less 10 minutes to choose your favorite meme. Usually we get quite a lot of votes, so make sure that you organize which ones you like better so that your favorite meme can win. Just to show you a recap of the previous years, The meme started in 2020 at the University of Leiden by our main organizer, Sven Kiefer. It started as a very small event where a selection of memes were printed and posted on the different offices. So it was an in-person event, and then people also go to vote and choose their favorite meme. And I would say that the winner of the 2020 is my personal favorite. And then the next year, we moved on to an online event so that we could reach more of you. So since then, we have had online exhibitions that are available through the Work Adventure software, so that anywhere in the planet that you want to check out memes, you can just join through the link, and then you can look at your favorite memes and vote for them. And here are the winners of the 2022 edition. A lot of you have a hard time choosing which one is your favorite meme, so we tend to have not just one winner, but 2 or 3 winners when all the votes are the same. And we also have the winners of the 2023 edition, and then the winners of the 2024 edition. So at the end of the talks, after Susan and Julie have given their presentations, we will come back into the live stream and we will present the winners for this year. Another thing that we would like to advertise is that we don't only do the exhibition like the one that we're hosting today, but we also have an education program. So if you know a high school teacher or a middle school teacher, or your kids are going to high school or middle school, and you would like them to be able to learn about science in a more fun way, then you can contact us, because similarly to the exhibition we're showing today, we can prepare an exhibition thought to schools. So the idea is that we go through all the memes, we make sure they are friendly for a younger audience, and then we select up to 4 memes in relation with the teacher that will be teaching the science class at the specific high school. And those 4 memes are explained by an expert. So basically the way it works is we contact the teachers, or you can contact the teachers and send them to us, and we organize an event just for their school. We discuss with them the topics that they have learned about in class, so that we can make sure that the memes are appropriate. And then we find a young career researcher. We have a presence for PhD students, but if you feel very strongly that you would like to be a guide and you are not a young career researcher, that's also fine. And a very important part for us is that we want students to have access to a science education in their mother tongue. So we make sure that wherever country the school is based on, we can find a guide that will explain the memes that it can do so on their mother tongue. So if you think that this is something that you would like to get involved with, whether that's as a teacher that you want your school to come, whether that is as a family member that you would like your kids to join, or whether you would just like to become one of the guides, please let us know, and we'll be very happy to facilitate that for you. And these are just some examples of some of the education memes that we have used so far to make sure that we can tackle complex science questions, like, for example, what is chemical disequilibrium and what is important? What does it mean when you read in the newspapers that scientists have found a biomarker? And we can approach these topics in an easy way that the students can understand, so that they can learn about science and understand scientific news in a better way. Now, I am almost close to the end of my presentation. We're going to give you an additional 10 minutes to go around the exhibition while we get everything ready with Susan for her talk. But in the meantime, please make sure that you check up our online accounts. We have recently created a Blue Sky account, since we don't exactly agree with what is going on with previous Twitter, now X. But we still maintain our X account, where you can see the memes that we post every day, as well as an Instagram account. So if you like what you see today and you like the memes that are posted on the exhibition, please make sure that you follow us on social media. And finally, we all started this at the very beginning of our PhDs, and now we actually have all graduated. So even though we hope to maintain this event for the next few years, we're also looking for new people to get involved. So please feel free to reach out to us, to the website, to the email, any way in which you find possible, either to become one of the volunteers and help us run the program, or if you just want to send us memes that you want to have feature in the next exhibition. So that is it for now. Please make sure that you make use of the last 10 minutes to find your favorite meme and vote for it. And then I'll give the floor to Susan Blackmore, who is our next speaker. Welcome back, everyone. We are ready for the first talk of the session. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Susan Blackmore. Susan is a British writer and lecturer. She obtained her PhD in parapsychology from the University of Surrey in the 1980s and now is a visiting professor at the University of Plymouth. She is the author of over 15 books, and she will talk to you today about meme evolution in the cosmos. So, without needing to wait anymore, Sue, please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thank you for inviting me to talk about meme evolution in the cosmos and for being involved in your weird and wonderful meme event. I want to start with talking about the best idea anybody ever had. I want to do this because so many people think they hear the word meme and they think that means internet memes. Well, it doesn't. It's much more interesting and broader than that. I'm sure some of you know that, but I equally know some of you won't. So I want to go right back to the beginning of where the idea of meme came from. And for me, the beginning is the best idea I've ever had. And that's such a weird idea, isn't it? That there even could be a best idea that anybody ever had. But I think there is and was, and I think others agree that the best idea was Darwin's idea of evolution by natural selection. Why is it such a good idea? Because once you understand how evolution works, you don't need to believe it. Drives me mad when you get mostly Americans saying, I don't believe in evolution. It's not a question of belief. It's a question of understanding how it works. And that was the incredible insight that Darwin had and that ultimately has led us to be talking about memes. So what did he say in this brilliant book uh, um, back in hundreds of years ago? He started he started by asking, can do I think I need to explain something first. What this idea amounts to is the evolutionary algorithm. It is a kind of three-step algorithm that is important to understanding evolution. And the three parts of it are that you need copying with variation and selection. And this is what Darwin did in his best idea. And his book, he starts off saying, well, do creatures vary? Yes, absolutely. I've studied different sizes of frogs and the different shapes of leaves, and I've studied the coats of donkeys and every kind of variation, in particular, all the beaks of the finches in the Galapagos Islands. And then on 300 pages or so later, he comes to, okay, they vary, but is there a struggle for life such that most of those creatures, whether they're plants or animals or bacteria, or whatever, such that most of them die? Yes, he says, for another 300 or so pages. Yes, you can see the fighting going on between animals, the lack of food so that lots starve to death. He calculated how long it would take for the whole planet to be covered in elephants if elephants kept breeding and none of them died. And you can imagine that for anything else, can't you? Like how many frogs there would be in the world if all the tadpoles survived and went on to mate. And so he goes on for the final section. And then he asks, does do the creatures that survive pass on to their offspring whatever it was that helped them survive? And that he could certainly answer. He didn't know anything about genes or algorithms, indeed, but he could show from the science that was available then that yes, there is passing on of characteristics. Then he says, after another few hundred pages, this means that the survivors in this struggle for life will pass on whatever characteristics help them to survive to their offspring. And this means that the offspring will be better adapted to the circumstances in which they evolved than in which they appeared than the parents were. And so this goes on with another generation and another generation and another generation. And that's why he was able to explain why evolution works, and indeed why it must work. This word must is my favorite word in all of this. This is what the philosopher, American philosopher, now recently died, had to say about it. If you have variation, selection, and heredity, then you must get evolution, or design out of chaos without the aid of mind. Isn't that wonderful? Design out of chaos without the aid of mind. So much for a designer god, eh? No need for him. And that's why it's so contentious. The whole business of evolution is so contentious in religious countries where they ban the teaching of evolution in schools. And you just understand it, then you can't have to believe or not believe. Another way of putting this is that it's copying with variation or selection. And if you take this as a neutral algorithm, the point is it will apply to any kind of information. And, well, I'm in the way, aren't I? I'll get out of the way. The information that is involved in this process is called the replicator. So genes are the first replicator. Now, we move on to Richard Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene. And I hope that a lot of you will have read that book. It is an old book, published in 1976, nearly 50 years ago, but it's still being read by a lot of people. It's still way up in the Amazon, amazing, in the Amazon rankings. And it's been called the best science book that's ever written. I mean, there are disputes about that, of course, but it's way up there with the in the importance that it has had. And the book was about the selfish gene, but the point he was making was exactly what I've been talking about. That what is important here is not the specifics of the gene or the selfish information that just inevitably gets copied when you have that evolutionary algorithm running. It's selfish information. He said it's more general than that. And I don't want to end this book with you thinking that it's all about genes, because I want you to understand that that it's more broad than that. And so he asked this critical question in the last chapter: are there any other replicators on this planet? And he said, well, look around you now. You can look around you. Look at the chair you're sitting. Look at the screen you're looking at. Look out the window. Look at the clothes you're wearing. Look at anything you can see, really. And he said, look, all of this is a new replicator swimming about in its primeval soup of culture, because all these things have been copied from person to person. And they've been copied with variation and selection. I mean, even take the chair you're sitting on, for example. That has been produced probably by a factory, but the shape of the chair and the color of the chair and everything, there'll be millions and millions of chairs have ever been made, and only some designs have survived. And if somebody sees your chair and they really like it, oh, I'll buy a chair like that. So when people like something, they make more copies of it. Just like with internet memes, if they like it, they'll send it off to somebody and make more copies of it, and so on. So he said, we have a new replicator, the second replicator. Genes are the first replicator. And the second replicator, well, what are we going to call it? And he said, well, because it's all about imitation, and because it happened, it came about because humans could imitate. He thought that mimeme was a suitable word, because that's the Greek for that which is imitated. But he said, I hope my classicist friends will forgive me if I abbreviate my meme to meme. And so that is how the concept of the meme came about. It is a second replicator on planet Earth. He did define it as a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. The trouble with that is once you start worrying about units, you get really deep in all kinds of insoluble problems. I mean, it's all right for chairs because, you know, a chair is a chair and you can have another chair and so on. But when you have music, you have problems. So Dan Dennett actually sorted out a lot of these things with the example of Beethoven's Fifth. So, for example, where da 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 is the only thing that's transmitted. Well, that's the meme. But if you sell a CD or download a copy of the whole thing, then that's what counts as the meme. So it's that which is copied. And I think the fundamental definition of a meme is that which is imitated or that which is copied. Now, when you really grasp that and look around you again now, you can see that the trees outside my window are there because the information that's been copied is all the genes that gave rise to those and the way they developed in their environment, guided by their genetic endowment. But when I look around my room, everything here, well, except for the houseplants, everything here has been copied by humans and by human selection. It is humans that have copied the ideas and the technologies and the objects, varied them, and then subjected them to selection so that some survive and some don't. And the result is this. So you can now see that examples of memes include songs, catchphrases, fashions, books, and technologies such as, well, all different kinds of technologies, building arches and bridges, and making cars, chairs, and even building computers. All of these are parts of culture. They're based on memes. They're based on copying. And what have we done? Look at what we have done. All that noise, all that consumption of the Earth's resources, all that energy being used up, all that obliteration of the life that would have been there, where there are now cities covered in tarmac, where the water can't run freely into the ground and into the sea, but is taken into drains and all sorts of things happening to it. And there's none left in the ground for the plants to grow, and no space for them either. So the second replicator has had a pretty devastating effect on the products of the first replicator, and we just keep going, making more and more and more stuff. Well, the question that I want to ask today, and that I'd like you to think about, because I think it's a really interesting and actually quite important question, is could there be a third replicator on this planet? So I like to think about this. I ask myself a question in this particular way. How did the second replicator emerge from the first? Well, what happened was a planet covered in a huge variety of plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, all sorts of things. But only one of those gene products, that is, human beings, early humans, were able to copy a new kind of information. So all the first lot was depended entirely on the evolutionary algorithm running on genes. But once we started to imitate, that was a new kind of imitation, behaviors and making objects and so on. And that set off culture. It's interesting to note that there are a few other species apart from us that can imitate to some extent, notably whales, dolphins, and some of the other great apes. But they don't copy with high enough fidelity or to enough extent to get the whole process going and produce cumulative evolution. Whether they could, we don't really know. It's possible, but it hasn't happened. So what would it take for the same thing to happen again? We would need some kind of new system which had a new kind of information, not genes, not human behaviors, that would do the three processes of copying with variation and selection. And do we have that? Well, I think we do. I think we have digital technology. If you think about the computers and phones and servers that we have, they are copying digital information with incredibly high fidelity. In other words, not making mistakes. Genes are very, very high fidelity, but with slight changes to produce the variation. In computers and phones and so on, the variation is produced in a different way. But you could be sure, going back to this, if you think about it, there's copying, variation, and selection. Now, I asked myself, what would make the turning point when it really becomes a replicator and could take off in the way that memes took off and cause these effects on the planet? I say for myself, the way I think of it is that would happen if the new technology, the digital technology, was capable of doing copying, varying, and selecting without human help. Is that happening? Well, when I first began thinking about this more than 10 years ago, I don't think it was. And now it is. Things are moving very fast. So the copying has been going on for a long time, since the first computers back in the 1950s. And indeed in other ways before that. But the variation mostly was being done by humans. So when you send messages to each other on email, whatever, or even with Google searches, and the selection was mostly done by humans. But I think now it is possible. So let's take the variation, for example. Think about LLMs. They scrape off as much text as possible from the web, and then they can mix it up and produce variations. So you can ask an LLM to write you a story about something or other, and it will do it. It is varying the information it's producing by mixing up all the words that it's got originally from humans. But the humans are not involved in that variation. Now, what about the selection? Mostly we select what we want. Certainly when it comes to internet memes, it's people selecting them. At least I think so. I don't think there are machines selecting internet memes from each other. But certainly there's a lot of selection going on between software out there in the great web, in the cloud. All of these processes are now being taken over. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, we're beginning to see all kinds of self-replicating processes going on. So it looks to me as though it's quite reasonable to say that we have a third replicator. And think about the speed. Life started on this planet after about 500 million years, and it was 4 more billion years before humans appeared. Then it was only a few million, possibly only 2 million, before culture really got going. And it's only been less than a century. Um, so things are speeding up. And, well, I'm not going to think about fourth replicator. Here, so let's stick with that we have a third replicator. Now, this replicator is using up even more energy. If you think about the servers and the amount of fuel that they're using, the amount of energy, the cooling, the water that they need to cool it, all this is contributing dramatically and increasing very fast from what's just produced by humans without digital technology. And this means an even worse effect on the climate because, of course, they produce more and more carbon dioxide, which is destabilizing the climate dramatically. It's weird to me that I can remember probably 20 years ago, climate scientists saying by 2025, the climate will be destabilized. And that year stuck in my head. And I thought, well, I won't be alive then. Oh, I'll be in my 70s. Oh, God, no, I couldn't be alive then. And here I am. And the effect, they were spot on. And we are seeing this disintegration now. What is our role in all of this? Well, we set it going. We can blame us, although these are all inevitable processes. But it rather looks to me as though we're a bit like mitochondria, you know, the organelles in all the cells of our body that produce the energy for all the processes that are going on in our body. They were originally free living bacteria-like organisms that got taken in and became useful. Are we just going to be the energy producers and actually less and less in charge of what's going on in the digital world? Well, that's rather how it looks to me. But this leads to a question, a last question that I want to think about, which is, why haven't we heard from anybody out there? People have been asking this question long enough. Eleanor told you that long ago I did my PhD in parapsychology. Back in those days, I believed in life after death and worlds beyond, and because I'd had dramatic out-of-body experience all sorts of other things, and I completely believe it. So I did lots and lots of studies in paranormal. I never found any paranormal phenomena, but also interviewing and talking to a lot of alien abductees, which was absolutely fascinating. I did presented a TV program on alien abduction, and these people really absolutely sure they've been abducted by aliens. Turned out for most of them it was actually sleep paralysis, but all of that's another story. So I don't think there is any good evidence that any aliens have visited us, and we don't get signals. Are there lots and lots of civilizations out there and we're not hearing from them? Well, as I said, plenty of people have asked this question, but they tend to think in terms of intelligence. You know, how much intelligent life is out there? But I suggest that actually what you really need to think about is think in terms of replicators. What replicators are out there? If you think of all the exoplanets out there, well, you can't think of all of them because we don't know how many there are. But if you think about that, there must be an awful lot of them. Why aren't we hearing any from any of them? Now, there's the famous Drake equation, which probably many of you know about. Here's the equation itself, the top. And the purpose of this equation is to think about, you can't put numbers to it, but you can think about what would happen if you did put numbers to it, to calculate or to estimate the number of communicative civilizations. In other words, the number of people that we might hear from. And Drake put into this formula how many suitable stars are formed, the fraction of those that have planets, how many of those planets would be Earth-like worlds or capable of sustaining life, how many actually did get life developing, how many of those had intelligence developing, and then the fraction of those that actually led to communication by using electromagnetic radiation. So I think about this in a slightly different way. So my question would be the same, the likelihood of discovering intelligent life in the galaxy, and wanting to find out the number of communicative civilizations there might be. And I would agree with Drake all in the first parts. But then I would think about it as the fraction of those life viable planets that get a first level replicator. Something like genes. It won't be genes, but it'll be something like that. The fraction of those that get a second level replicator, which, as I've explained, would mean that one of the products of the first replicator would discover a way to copy information with variation and selection in a new way. And the fraction of those that produce a third replicator, which would mean something like digital information and all that technology that entails, that would produce electromagnetic communication possibilities and allow them to communicate with us. And the question at the end for both of these is, what is the expected lifetime of planets? Now I'm going to get gloomy here, because I think the way that I'm thinking about it, and when I look out of the window and I look at the peculiar climate we've got here in the UK at the moment, and it's all changing and strange and not like it used to be, and going to get worse, and we're not doing anything about it. This is, I maintain, because we now have a third replicator and we're not doing anything, and maybe we can't do anything back as AI streaks ahead. And that would mean, if that's a general principle, that we're not going to hear from any communicative civilizations, because although the first, second, and third replicators will appear again and again, by the very nature of what they are, they will soon lead to some kind of destruction of their planet, whether that's by resource, taking up too many resources, or whether it's by shattering the climate or any other way, according to what kind of planet it is. But I'd better not end up too miserably, had I. This may not happen, but I do think it's worth thinking about. And I think above all that the best idea anybody ever had, which is understanding the way evolution works and the way that led to the concept of memes. And that has led to you all being here, making wonderful memes about exoplanets, and I think and hope entertaining you all. So thank you very much for inviting me, and have a good exhibition.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that wonderful talk and for agreeing to be a part of our weird and wonderful event. For the rest of you listening online, we're going to take a very short break now, just while we set up for our next speaker, and we'll be back online in a couple of minutes. So we hope you'll stay there to hear Julie speak. Thank you again for attending this talk, and back in a couple of minutes. And welcome back, everyone. We are ready for our next speaker. We have Julie Novakova. She is an evolutionary and theoretical biologist at the Institute of Physics of the Czech Academy of Sciences, but she is also a science fiction author, editor, and science communicator. So please, Julie, whenever you are ready, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Helena. I'm so happy to be here. And it's my honor to talk after Susan, because when I started my biology studies 15 years ago, I read The Meme Machine and I loved it very much. And actually, right now, I feel like I should be talking rather about the theme of my PhD thesis that I submitted earlier today, which is about the evolution of altruism. But my talk is about something different because, as Helena said, apart from being an evolutionary and theoretical biologist, I do lots of science outreach. I'm active in astrobiology, and I'm a science fiction writer and editor interested in science art in general. And my talk will be about exoplanets in art and science fiction in a few projects that are close to what I do or that I took part in. And let's start with saying that using science fiction for outreach is not a new idea. Some of you might recognize this man. It's Herbert George Wells, a prolific science fiction writer and also a biology and chemistry teacher who liked to envisage how alien life might look or how it might go if it ever met with Earth life. And in a Nature column at the end of the 19th century, he talked about using literature for popularizing science, or rather taking inspiration from popular literature like Edgar Allan Poe's mysteries in writing about science for the public, to really engage in the process of the ingenious unraveling of evidence, as he called it. And this is something that we are doing today, because we can see that science fiction has been a source of inspiration for many people. Here is some data about from astronomers from a French astronomy conference collected by Boissier last year. And that's the data in blue columns. And the red stars show the same data from Elizabeth Stanway from British astronomers. And on the left, we have adoration, meaning how much the astronomers at the conference liked science fiction. And the higher number, the more they liked it. We can see that especially British astronomers really love their science fiction, but it's also true of their French counterparts. And on the right side, we see the influence, meaning how did reading science fiction or potentially watching science fiction or listening to it influence their decision to go into science, to become astronomers. And here we see more difference between the French and the British. In the British, we can see quite a lot of influence. In the French, it's slightly different. But it's clear that it has been some source of inspiration. So it's a good gateway for people to learn more about science, about space, including exoplanets, which are the main topic today. So let's dive into how science fiction tackles the topics of exoplanets. Of course, planets around other stars were present in science fiction ever since the beginning of the modern era of the genre. But up until recently, there weren't really any attempts to see how the science fictional depictions reflected the actual scientific discoveries. And recently, there were several papers by Emma Johanna Puranen and her colleagues. And the most interesting one, I think, is about science fiction media representations of exoplanets. Uh, they collected several hundred imaginations of exoplanets in various science fictional sources across media, not just novels and stories, but also TV series, movies, games, etc., and looked how they changed in time and how they changed across the media. And basically, ever since the beginning of the 90s, after the first confirmed exoplanet discoveries, the depictions became increasingly more realistic, more diverse, showing not just planets like our Earth, but also more gas giants and more, let's say, exotic planets, reflecting the wonderful diversity of exoplanets that have been discovered up until now in the over 5,000 confirmed exoplanets so far. And Emma is also the editor of a 2021 book around distant stars, which tackles exoplanets from the science fictional viewpoint, which I can heartily recommend. And it's not the only example of science fiction used to do outreach in the field of exoplanet science. In November 2020, there was the Exoplanet Demographics meeting, and Jesse Christiansen and Heather Clitheroe prepared several e-zines to convey these scientific topics presented at the conference to the general public audience in the form of very short stories, but also poems, images, and more. Again, it's a really good educational and inspirational resource. And we can see that ever since the beginning of science fiction, there have been dreams of going further into space and dreams of how it might look around other stars. On the left, we have Beyond the Planet Earth by Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, the father of rocket science, but also a science fiction writer. And there have been plenty of let's say, not just imaginative in the way of the story, but scientifically imaginative science fiction novels and short stories ever since. This is just a really, really brief example of some of them. And what we did at the European Astrobiology Institute were especially these two anthologies, which merge science fiction with popular science essays. The first of them, Strangest of All, was released in early 2020. So if I went chronologically, I should have talked about that before the Exodem e-zines and before Around Distant Stars. This was published in May 2020 in one of the first waves of COVID, when there was no opportunity of in-person science outreach, and many schools were closed because of the need to limit the transmission of the virus. So we released this book that we have been preparing before as a free ebook for people to read during lockdowns, and to learn more about not just exoplanet science, but astrobiology in general from their homes. And the stories feature topics from subsurface oceans on planets and moons around other stars, but vaguely similar to the subsurface oceans that we know are present on moons like Europa, Enceladus, Titan, and more, all the way to SETI and the Drake equation that Susan talked about. And it remains free to download on the website of the European Astrobiology Institute, so anyone can read it in any of the formats that are available there. And since it was downloaded many thousands of times and it had pretty good reviews, we decided to continue in this project with a more ambitious anthology, Life Beyond Us. Because in Strangest of All, we had reprint stories, meaning previously published. And after each story, I wrote a short popular science article about the topic presented in the story, be it the subsurface oceans or exotic photosynthesis, SETI, and more. And in Life Beyond Us, we had original stories by 27 authors around the world, including Peter Watts, whose novel Blindside really reminded me of the meme machine when I read it. So I don't know if Susan and Peter know each other, but the novel echoes the earlier published meme machine quite well, and also presents a science fictional way of popularizing the science that Susan wrote about. And uh, the topics, again, were quite varied, and lots of them included exoplanets. And to follow up on Susan's previous talk, some of these stories also tackle the idea of planets and biospheres being considered as evolutionary units in themselves as replicators. It's not a new idea, it's been here ever since Jim Lovelock and the Gaia hypothesis. And here we can see science fictional takes on the clashes of biospheres and how life might spread from one planet to another, either unwittingly through lithopanspermia and other means, or consciously with spaceships and people and so on. And it's important to think about these things because as we venture more into space, we will increasingly meet with not just scientific, but also ethical questions of space exploration and questions that border on the ethics and science, for instance, planetary protection, especially relevant now in case of Mars, which, as far as we know, had habitable environments in the past, had liquid water for a quite long time, and had all the conditions that we think are necessary for the origin of life. Whether life actually was present there at some time, we are not sure. So we are sending probes like the currently present Perseverance or the upcoming rover by ESA Rosalind Franklin to learn more about that. And if people land on Mars, it hampers planetary protection quite a lot because we are walking bags of microbes which are impossible to sterilize and impossible to completely scrap in airlocks. So if humans land on Mars, we will inevitably introduce some Earth-based microorganisms on the red planet. And if they find some underground environment where they would be able to survive, then it might be a big problem for the search for life and an even bigger problem for a potential local Martian biosphere, if there is any. So again, under the current situation with talks about humans going to Mars as a new priority, this is an ethical/scientific question that we should be considering more and more. And in the future, questions like that might become relevant even for exoplanets if we're talking very far future. So this was the science fiction/science outreach project that we did at the European Astrobiology Institute, and we hope to do more of that. And you can see the beautiful cover art by Dan O'Driscoll showing the James Webb Space Telescope reflecting potential forms of life inspired by the drawings of the evolutionary biologist Ernst Haeckel. And inspiration from science and science art is another thing I would like to mention in the brief rest of my talk, because at the Institute of Physics, where I do science outreach and education, we ran an exhibition called Reflections last year, which tackled the topic of exoplanets in a more distant way, by featuring, here you can see on the left, this painting by a Polish painter, Łukasz Huculak, which is called Terraforma, and it's meant to convey a sense of an alien planet that humans might want to settle and terraform, but at what cost and with what consequences. And from each of the paintings, including this one, a and the artists were presented with the results of this analysis under the microscope, and it served as an inspiration for them to create more works inspired by these analyses, which you can see on the middle image from the opening of the exhibition. In the background, there's always the main painting, the main image, and then the inspirations from the microscopy images. So we definitely hope to do more such events in the future, because it's a way for art to be more closely drawn to science and more closely inspired, but also a way of showing that the inspiration flows both ways, that science is continually inspired by art, and it analyzes art and can even sometimes constitute art in itself. So there's definitely more projects coming up. Some of them will happen at the biennial astrobiology conference in July, taking place in Iceland, which I invite everyone interested in astrobiology to. And before that, there is also the Falcon meeting of early career scientists and students, organized partly by EANA. And we definitely have lots of future plans concerning bio art and speculative art, about the depictions and representations of alien life and exoplanets in science fiction, and lots more projects. We have one grant submitted that might be helpful for this. I can't really talk about it in detail because it's currently under review and we don't know the results yet. But if it's successful, there definitely will be more opportunities of art-science collaborations. So please stay tuned. And we definitely welcome also meme artists, because as the exhibition shows, memes can be an art form in itself and can serve educational purposes, same as science fiction stories and novels. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, just drop them in the YouTube chat and I will answer them there as well. So thank you, Helena, Sven, and Peter for inviting me. And I hope that this has been helpful and inspirational in some way for the audience. So have a great day and a great rest of the exhibition.
Perfect. Julie, thank you so much for this fascinating talk. We hope we can all attend Beacon, and also maybe that we can organize another event like we did with Iana so that we can get many more memes. So the part of the event that is about talks is now done. So we are currently just finishing counting out the votes so that we can share with you which ones are the winners for this year. So please just bear with me for a couple of minutes while we get everything ready so that we can share the winners with you. Okay, perfect. So all the votes are in. So it's time to share the winners. Before we go to the actual winners, I will show you some of the memes that got a lot of votes, but not enough votes to actually win. So first we start with this fantastic meme from Toy Story regarding false positives. And this was actually one of the submissions that we got from the Anna concert competition. Then, of course, one of the raccoon memes also made it to one of the most voted memes that we had so far. And as well, a meme regarding panspermia. So thank you to everyone that created those memes and submitted them. We apologize that you didn't win, but you still got a lot of votes, so you should be very proud of yourself. So without further delay, here are the memes that won the 2025 edition. Thank you so much for submitting the memes and also for attending the exhibition, both to vote for the memes and for attending the talks. We would like to let you know that this is actually the year where we got the most submissions from outside people. That means that usually the organizers submit a fair amount of memes, but this year we got over 160 memes. So thank you very much for collaborating, and we hope that you submit many more memes this year. So just to finish up the event, thank you to all the organizers for making this possible, to all of you for submitting the memes and voting for them, and of course to our two wonderful speakers, Susan and Julie, for making time today and for preparing those wonderful talks. We hope you all had an amazing time attending the event and to see you again next year.